Chests, especially small caskets, over which we have more complete mastery, are objects that may be opened. When a casket is closed, it is returned to the general community of objects. It takes its place in exterior space, but it opens. For this reason, a philosopher-mathematician would say that it is the first differential of discovery. In a later chapter, I plan to study the dialectics of inside and outside. But from the moment the casket is opened, dialectics no longer exist. The outside is effaced with one stroke. An atmosphere of novelty and surprise reigns. The outside has no more meaning. And quite paradoxically, even cubic dimensions have no more meaning, for the reason that a new dimension, the dimension of intimacy, has just opened up. Footnote. In a letter to Aubonel, Mallarmé wrote, "Every man has a secret inside in him. Many die without finding it and will never find it because they are dead. It no longer exists, nor do they. I am dead, and risen again with the jeweled key of my last spiritual casket. It is up to me now to open it in the absence of any borrowed impression, and its mystery will emanate in a sky of great beauty." Letter dated July 16, 1866. For someone who is a good judge of values and who sees things from the angle of the values of intimacy, this dimension can be an infinite one. As proof, I should like to quote a marvelously perceptive fragment for which an article by Jean-Pierre Richard, which offers a veritable theorem of the topoanalysis of intimate space. Jean-Pierre Richard is a writer who analyzes literary works in terms of their dominant images. Here he allows us to relive the moment in Poe's story, The Gold Bug, when the casket is opened. To begin with, the jewels found in it are of inestimable value. They could not, of course, be ordinary jewels. However, the treasure was not inventoried by a lawyer but by a poet. It is fraught with unknown and possible elements. It becomes again an imaginary object, generating hypotheses and dreams. It deepens and escapes from itself toward an infinite number of other treasures. Thus, it seems that at the moment when the story reaches its conclusion, a conclusion that is as cold as a police record, it has lost nothing of its oniric richness. The imagination can never say, "Was that all?" For there is always more than meets the eye. And as far as I have said several times, an image that issues from the imagination is not subject to verification by reality. Having achieved valorization of the contents by valorization of the container, Jean-Pierre Richard makes the following penetrating comment: "We shall never reach the bottom of the casket." I do love that. The infinite quality of the intimate dimension could not be better expressed. Sometimes a lovingly fashioned casket has interior perspectives that change constantly as a result of daydream. We open it and discover that it is a dwelling place. I like that he said dwelling place. That a house is hidden in it. Pardon me. To illustrate, there exists a marvel of this kind in a prose poem by Charles Cross, in which the poet carries on where the cabinet maker left off. Beautiful objects, created by skillful hands, are quite naturally carried on by a poet's daydream. And for Charles Cross, imaginary beings are born of the secret of a marquetry casket. Quote, "In order to detect its mystery, in order to go beyond the perspective of marquetry, to reach the imaginary world through the little mirrors, one had to possess a rapid glance, fine hearing, and be keenly attentive." Indeed, the imagination sharpens all of our senses. The imagining attention prepares our attention for instantaneousness. Sorry about that. And the poet continues. Finally, I caught a glimpse of the clandestine festivity. I heard the tiny minuets. I guessed the complicated web of entanglements that was being woven inside the casket. The doors open, and we see what appears to be a parlor for insects. The white, brown, and black floors are seen in exaggerated perspective. But when the poet closes the casket, inside it he sets a nocturnal world in motion. When the casket is closed, when the ears of the importunate are stopped with sleep or filled with outside noises, when the thoughts of men dwell upon some positive object, then strange scenes take place in the casket's parlor. Several persons of unwanted size and appearance step forth from the little mirrors. This time, in the darkness of the casket, it is the enclosed reflections that reproduce objects. The inversion of interior and exterior is experienced so intensely by the poet that it brings about an inversion of objects and reflections. And once more, after dreaming of this tiny parlor enlivened by the dancing of figurines of another day, the poet opens the casket, page 90. The lights go out. The guests, composed of bells and their beaux, and a few aging relatives, disappear pell-mell into the mirrors and along the corridors and colonnades, without giving a thought to their dignity, while chairs and tables and hangings evaporate into thin air. And the parlor remains empty, silent and clean. Serious-minded persons may then say with the poet, "It's a marquetry casket, and that's all." Echoing this reasonable opinion, the writer who is averse to playing with inversions of large and small, exterior and intimacy may also say, "It's a poem, and that's all," and nothing more. In reality, however, the poet has given concrete form to a very general psychological theme, namely, that there will always be more things in a closed than in an open box. To verify images kills them, and it is always more enriching to imagine than to experience. I don't know. Sure. The action of the secret passes continually from the hider of things to the hider of self. A casket is a dungeon for objects, and here is a dreamer who feels that he shares the dungeon of its secret. We should like to open it, and we should also like to open our hearts. The following lines by Jules Supervielle can be read in a dual sense. Roughly, I search in coffers that surround me, putting disarray in the darkness of cases that are deep, deep as though they had departed this life. He who buries a treasure buries himself with it. A secret is a grave, and it is not for nothing that a man who can be trusted with a secret boasts that he is like the grave. All intimacy hides from view, and I recall that the late Joe Basquiat wrote, "No one sees me changing, but who sees me? I am my own hiding place." It is not my intention in this volume to recall the problem presented by the intimacy of substances, which I have outlined elsewhere. I shall, however, point out the nature of the two dreamers who seek the intimacy of man and the intimacy of matter. Jung has shown very clearly this correspondence between dreamers of alchemy. In other words, there is only one place for the superlative element of what is hidden. The hidden in men and the hidden in things belong in the same topoanalysis. As soon as we enter into this strange region of the superlative, which is a region that has hardly been touched by psychology. And to tell the truth, all positivity makes the superlative fall back upon the comparative. To enter into the domain of the superlative, we must leave the positive for the imaginary. We must listen to poets. Well, that's the end of chapter 3. Next chapter 4, Nests. Okay. Hope you have a good night.